Hello everyone. So this will be the last presentation, which is on the solution to climate change. And in this presentation we address two issues, that of adaptation and mitigation. So mitigation versus adaptation. What is adaptation in the first place? It's simply adjustment in natural or human system in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or their effect. And it aims to achieve two objectives: to moderate harm or exploit beneficial opportunity. While on the other hand, climate change mitigations are strategies and policies that reduces the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, either by reducing their emission or by increasing their carbon capture, which we can also say like creating carbon sinks. We consider the problem of climate change to emanate from increasing greenhouse gas concentration, as we see on the diagram. And this leads to climate change, and of course we have the impacts. Addressing increase in greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere is the focus of mitigation. You can see the direction of the arrow. And then dealing with the impacts is part of adaptation. And this solution to climate change, which include both mitigation and adaptation, we call them complementary measures. So they need to work together. And of course, these two solutions have been the focus of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and even the IPCC on how to deal with the impact of climate change on ecosystems and society. And I'll give an example, like in reducing energy consumption and using clean technology. When we talk about reducing energy consumption, what is the source of energy in the first place? Here in the Seychelles, we get majority of our energy from fossil fuel energy sources. So switching into renewable energy like photovoltaic will be a mitigation strategy, because it will reduce eventually the amount of CO2 emission from fossil fuel energy sources. Mitigation measures address the cause of the problem, which is increasing greenhouse gas concentration. For example, mitigation could be measures to reduce energy consumption and promote clean energy technology. Adaptation measures, on the other hand, deal with the impacts of climate change. The objective of adaptation is to reduce the vulnerability of society and ecosystems. For example, adaptation could involve managing watersheds to reduce landslides or developing alert system for extreme events. A very good example would be having a robust early warning system. For example, if like what happened in Mozambique in terms of the cyclone, if the early warning system was very good and there was alert on time that people can evacuate a particular area or town, it could have reduced the number of lives lost. So having a very good and robust early warning system is important for climate change adaptation. Mitigation in forestry can also be implemented through avoided deforestation or promoting carbon sequestration in new forests. So we talk about forest plantation in degraded lands. So we encourage a lot of tree planting. Here in the Seychelles, I think a lot of mangrove restoration activities have been ongoing. This is important, creating carbon sinks. Adaptation can be implemented through promoting biodiversity conservation and enhancing landscape connectivity. So when we talk about improving biodiversity conservation and enhancing landscape connectivity, it's important not only for biodiversity conservation, but to be able to stabilize the soil and to reduce the occurrence of landslide. So adapting the land in a way that it becomes much more resilient. For agriculture, mitigation could be implemented through reducing the use of energy or fertilizers, whereas adaptation can be achieved through drought-resistant varieties or soil conservation. We also call it soil water conservation. So there are different techniques that have been developed in the agricultural sector as adaptation strategy. So we can use some kind of like compost fertilizer rather than using synthetic inorganic fertilizer that have been produced through intensive industrial processes that consume huge amount of fossil fuel. So what do? Mitigation reduces the source of the problem, and we say emission of greenhouse gas, that is the problem. But where are they coming from? From our transportation sector or systems, electricity production, agriculture, cement, waste, and burning of forests. While adaptation prepare and plan to deal with the impacts of climate change, to avoid loss of life, infrastructure, money. With adaptation, putting in the right intervention will be able to improve food security, improve energy security, improve water security, securing critical infrastructure. This is very key in the Seychelles. Good planning and construction practices. We have now new building codes here in the Seychelles that can even accommodate like solar PV systems. Education and awareness of community. We need this continuous awareness. Good monitoring and research on the effect of climate change and preparing for natural disasters. This is something that we cannot avoid. At some point, we have to deal with natural disaster. That is why I think the University of Seychelles has a module in the master's program on ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. Climate change in the Seychelles. What are some of the mitigation actions? We have the wind energy or the wind farms, which is important because we have the wind speed, which is quite good, but the amount of energy that is being generated from this source is not that much. And we have to consider the aspect also of seasonality. So the wind speed is not really like strong all year round. But for the solar PV, it's very good option for renewable energy in the Seychelles. We are in a tropical island state, receiving huge amount of sunshine, but there are also some technical limitations. Not all the architectural design of the building can support this innovation. So this is something that we have to consider, but it is feasible. We talk about the e-cars also. These are also other opportunities that we can reduce the amount of emissions. On the other hand, there are some adaptation actions that have been taking place in the Seychelles, like controlling erosion, and there have been ecosystem restoration through the ecosystem adaptation initiative. So they are simply nature-based solution that uses ecosystem services or biodiversity to improve the adaptive capacity of the system or a particular site. This is a photo that was taken in the month of February at Silhouette Island. So a lot of beach erosion is ongoing very close to the resort of Hilton La Brise. So the geotextile sandbags are used as an adaptation strategy to be able to check the erosion, not to really like advance close to the resort. And we have also the sea walls that tries to contain the water. It's also a hard engineering adaptation action. Without the sea wall, the water will be on the road. And we have the rock armoring also, which is an adaptation action also in the Seychelles. We call this other action timber piling. This is happening a lot in Pralen. So timber piling. But there is one key thing with this adaptation action, that at some point you have to replace the timber because they won't live forever. But it's an important adaptation action that stabilizes the coastline. Then we have the bollards, the photo C, which is on the bottom. And the bollards, they prevent the cars from gaining access into the dune area. You will see this a lot around Turtle Bay area and in different parts around Answayal. Because without the bollards, some of the community members will prefer to drive their cars right into the dune area. And this creates a lot of pressure and possible erosion channel when it eventually rains. On the top right, you have like the dune grasses. So we need the dune vegetation to be able to keep the sand intact. Because when the dune area is destroyed, eventually that beach is going to be destroyed. It's just a matter of time. And to the right, which is like the figure B, we have the boardwalk. A classical example, we have this very close to Constance Ephelia down south. So we need the boardwalk because why? Some of these areas, they might be marshy. Some we don't want to create too much pressure in the dune area, and people have to use the boardwalk. These are very important adaptation strategies. What about improving drainage and reconnecting wetlands? So we need to think about when it's high and low tide. We need to improve drainage. There should be connectivity in the wetland because these are some of the breeding ground of fishery stocks. Connectivity will mean that they are connected eventually to the ocean. But if they are separated apart, at some point, then it might impact their reproductive success. There have been this kind of reprofiling of streams. I think this is at Valdondo Belazar. It's part of the ecosystem-based adaptation project for climate change in the Seychelles. There have been some mangrove restoration projects, eradication of invasive species. These are all adaptation actions. But when we talk about ecosystem-based adaptation actions, for example, continuous monitoring might be very important. And the University of Seychelles have been involved in this project with the ecosystem-based adaptation project on water quality assessment. So to be able to carry out on a monthly basis water test, because this will inform about the quality of the water, since a lot of effluent is being discharged into the wetland. We have also issues on water scarcity, and rainwater harvesting and use is very, very important in the Seychelles. If we are able to harness all the huge quantity of rainfall that we get, and we can use this grey water for other purposes, it will reduce pressure on our freshwater resources. Thank you for your attention.